To be very low and then gradually get higher, just like the way I'm talking right now.
Yes, I like that. Okay.
This is Conscious Kendrick. This is Conscious Kendrick, and I hope it's not condescending, but I wrote this, I'm condescending, a potent and constant ending the questions posed to the pros and the gods of sending. Let us pray. If God were from Compton just for a day, would he come out and play? Would he stay in the house and clean his AK? Pull up on niggas beefing, close his eyes, let it spray. Yeah.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is DSP News, going with part 2 of Phil's problem. Phil's situation, ladies and gentlemen. In the first part, we went over the revealing of the problem, which are taxes, which most of us called. But in the second part, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go over how it happened. Now, granted, DSP has given us a multitude of excuses. We're going to actually go over those. I'm not sure if I'm going to have a video plug-in for that or not. Because, you know, it's just a whole lot of excuses. But maybe I will, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just talk about it, and you'll have GTG radio in the background. It'll be fun. So, this is how the scenario kind of plays out, in a rather interesting and yet rather pathetic fashion, if I can be perfectly honest with you. Make sure I got the line right. Okay, so here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Phil owes back taxes on his business tax. Now, keep the laughter down to a minimum, ladies and gentlemen. I understand it's hilarious, but this is a real serious issue. Hear me out. So Phil left Connecticut because he was tired of the state taxes. They were just too damn high. How do you expect him to be the proprietor of a successful business with fucking Connecticut's high-ass taxes? Jesus Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, he needed a change. Okay? He needed a change. Now, granted, there were some personal issues, too, that were plaguing him, which, interestingly enough, came out on Twitter, where some interesting chat logs came in about how Phil felt about some of his chums back in the day. And the timeline of these chat logs range from about 2010 to about 2012. I'm not sure if I'm going to put him in the video, or I'll just have my mascot's face in there. We'll see what I decide to put in the background. But ladies and gentlemen, he had to leave Connecticut because the state tax was killing him. He just couldn't do it. So him and his former ex-fiance, aka ex-girlfriend, aka I donated all of her stuffed animals and stuff without her permission. We'll save that for a whole nother video, ladies and gentlemen. He decided, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and move to Seattle. You know what I mean? Where all the hippies are at. Where all the well, in his words, not mine. Where all those hippies are at. Where all those very nice, kind-hearted people that just happen to have really great marijuana, at least from what I've heard, were at. He wanted to go to a state where it's a bit more organic. Where the fresh air could cure his gout. The gout that has been plaguing him his whole career, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus Christ. He's tried everything. He's tried special teas. He's tried special creams. Just, there was nothing to relieve the pain and suffering of his gout. But apparently, the Seattle air did it. Apparently, Washington State's air did it for him. It was beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. He had the relief that he hadn't had in years. He's had chronic back pains too, ladies and gentlemen. Shoveling the snow in Connecticut just made it so difficult for him. But Seattle, it cured him. It brought him the relief that he needed. Touching. Riveting, even. Ladies and gentlemen, it was also good for his business. It gave Leanna a chance to start her business. Soap. Fight Club. That's what we're doing here. We're making luxury soap to be sold at a rather cheap and affordable price, with a multitude of scents and aromas. Now, I'm not saying I don't have a degree in business, but if I was her, I would have tried to market that stuff off to like hotels, motels, resorts, things like that, as well as doing the online situation. What was it called? Blackcurrant. Thank you. Blackcurrant. I would have done that aside from also Blackcurrant to help get her her soap business off the ground. Let's say this, for example. Let me paint you a scenario, ladies and gentlemen. So let's say she has 20 bars of two of each scent, roughly, right? So she chooses 20 bars, 2 of each scent, and she goes off to, so that'd be 5 different scents, I guess. Or no, sorry, it wouldn't be 5, that'd be 10, my bad. So she would go off to a couple of hotels, a couple of motels, even go for the chains, Motel 6, Holiday Inn, so on and so forth. Head over there and be like, hi, my name is Leanna, and I'm trying to start my own business. And I have a couple of samples here of soap that maybe you guys would like to try. And if it is something that you're interested in, then I could provide those as an addition to the soap that you guys already provide in your rooms. Easy. If they say yes, they say yes. If they say no, they say no. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's simple. And by word of mouth, it could work itself out. She goes to a couple of them, spend a day or two, going to a couple of these places, and there you go. And see who calls you back in a week or so. You never know. You never know. A lot of people who do independent soap have done some stuff like that and made it work. As well as what you saw in the movie Fight Club, where they actually went to department stores and made that happen. So it's something that can happen, especially if the product's good enough. But that's neither here nor there. She's with Tyrone. She's happy. I'm going to be over there for dinner this weekend. It's going to be great. I'll let you know what she makes. Now, let's talk about Phil. Phil went over to Washington State, and did his thing. Went ahead, he had his house, his castle, ladies and gentlemen, what he worked his ass off for. He had his maid, he had his girlfriend, he had his girlfriend, and he had his business intact. At the time, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of history, he was actually in the middle of possible negotiations with his machinima contract. His previous negotiations didn't work out well. He had gone ahead and been moved from I want to tell you, he was, before he moved, he was actually taken away from the view-based contract into the revenue, or the ad-based contract. So he was basically starting from scratch. He was starting fresh. Now, he was fortunate that with this move, there wasn't going to be an actual adjustment in his contract. So for another year, his bacon was safe. Safe, ladies and gentlemen. With that being said, he hit the ground running. He had all these ideas that he wanted to try, the green screen, so on and so forth. All these plans, all these ideas, the resurrection of a great series that he didn't get a chance to finish, Project 7. Ladies and gentlemen, I've kind of given you a very broad, but factual, to a degree, factual history of why he left Connecticut to move to Seattle. He wanted the fresh air. He wanted the cure for his gout and for his back. He wanted a nice place to raise his daughter. Girlfriend. I'm sorry. And more importantly, he wanted a place where he could set up shop. He could set his business up and hit the ground running. That's what he wanted, ladies and gentlemen. Now, with that being said, this is where we take a bit of a dark turn. Phil had done some things that were questionable. Very questionable. But the main thing is going to be the subject of this video. His taxes. When Phil got there, for some reason, Phil's accountant, which is what he was an accountant, had said, Phil goes to his accountant and is like, hey, I'm moving. Can you give me a little bit of information about Washington State? Because Phil's too lazy to look it up himself. And the guy was like, no, I can do that for you, but, let me know as you get closer to the move if that's something you want to do. Because remember, Phil said he was in steady contact with this gentleman throughout the whole moving process. as he was looking for the house and so on and so forth. But ladies and gentlemen, he says that when he finally set his eyes on where he was going to go, he's like, well, I'm going to be moving to Connecticut and I'm going to have to leave you. I'm going to have to, it's probably smarter if I went and was able to get me an accountant there. And the guy's like, no. Phil, we've been in a good relationship. I've been providing you service for quite a number of years. You can trust me to continue to provide you that service. Phil's like, well, yeah, you're right. You have done well by me, as well as you're a family friend. Forgot to leave that out. And sure, no problem. Now, Phil could have taken a little bit of time, because he did bring this concern up to this accountant about, hey, what do you really know about what's going on in Washington State and their restrictions and their policies and so on and so forth. He said he would take care of it. That's what this accountant told him. Phil, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is important about taking the extra step. If Phil had the concern that, hey, I should probably get somebody in that state to look over my affairs because I'll be living in that state, they'll be well versed in some of the situations and some of the regulations that are going to be going on in that state, maybe I should have this person do it. And you'd be right to say so, ladies and gentlemen. But Phil doesn't think like us. Phil, on blind faith and doing what he normally does, just throwing money at the problem, decides, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take your word for it. I'm going to let you do my taxes. Now, as I was about to say, he should have taken some diligence. 5-10 minutes to look up what needs to be done from a state level. Does Washington State have a business tax? Pure and simple. Do they have a business tax? Something that affects me directly. Is it something that I should be looking out for? You would think a normal person would do that, but not Phil, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, not Phil. Phil didn't need to do that. He decided not to do that. He decided to go on the word of this person, of his accountant. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we have some major problems. Because 3 years later, that one slip up, that one mistake has cost Phil, we don't know actually at this very point, by the way, and a ridiculous amount of money. I'm going to throw some figures at you. It is said, or at least Phil has said, that he probably owes as low as $5,000, but as much as $40,000. Most of you are like Golden, GTG. You're my unreliable news source. Please explain to me why you think he thinks he needs this much money. Well, I will. Ladies and gentlemen, Phil has thrown out some scenarios. Interesting ones at that. First thing, he has to pay the back tax for the last 3 years. 3 years that he owes money, that he's owed the state of Washington money that he did not pay. On top of that, he also has to pay this year's taxes, 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, he also has to pay for the accountant that he has currently in Connecticut State that's helping him deal with all these problems and stipulations. Fourth, ladies and gentlemen, the fees. The fees on those back taxes that he owes, as well as possible penalties. And 5, ladies and gentlemen, Phil's own peace of mind. This has disrupted Phil's comfortable life. And Lord knows somebody needs to pay for it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go into a soundbite where we're going to hear from Phil's mouth. I am your unreliable source for news, but I want you to hear it from the pig's mouth. I know most of you are like, Golden, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be reliable. You're not supposed to be providing us with the coverage that we can rely on. I understand. But in truth, ladies and gentlemen, for this 3-part segment to work, I do need to have some verification. You do need to hear it from his mouth with all the snorts and everything about it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a coin toss on who I choose. It'll be a matter of who I find first. Will it be Mr. Stuffs, who I certainly enjoy his content, I'm a big fan, please go over to his channel and subscribe. Or will it be Snort Brunel, who's also a very trusted source? It'll be just a matter of who I find first. But ladies and gentlemen, you will hear out of the pig's mouth, Phil's mouth, what his problems are. And after that, we'll come back and we'll talk about it. We will continue to dissect where he messed up. Now, most of you guys would say that the problem happens from his very birth. He had a better fight on a bare sheet drying. Ooh, that was loaded Lux. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I got in the battle mode. My bad. Wow. But ladies and gentlemen, Phil has made his mistakes. But in Phil's words, it's not his fault. So we're going to go into the soundbite, and we're going to see what we can make out of this. We're going to let Phil tell us in his own words what his problem is. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Phil on the line with some audio. We're about to get him in right now. Please give us a second. And ladies and gentlemen, this is DSP News Special Report. Always late, never breaking. The unreliable coverage that you can't count on. A part of GTG Network and Productions. Just a second, ladies and gentlemen.
Sound good?
And honestly, now I'm going to tell you guys the truth, okay?
Yes, because you've probably been lying to us up to this point. Ladies and gentlemen, as you heard, Snow Purnell ended up winning the coin toss. I'm sorry, I couldn't find Mr. Stuff's video fast enough, so Snow Purnell will be the video of choice for today. Shouts out to Mr. Stuff Stuff. Let us go. DSP Gaming revealing the problem. We're going to probably skip around a little bit, but I want to try to get us to the gritty. I just want to make sure that the story is out there from his own mouth so we all understand.
Completely honest with all of you. It's not just one thing, it's two things. One thing is very personal. It's regarding my health, and I'm not going to even tell you the details about it because honestly, someone's health is their own business unless there's a reason to publicly come out and talk about it. I'm not going to talk about that portion of it at this point. Maybe in the future I will bring it up, but I've been having health problems. I've actually, see, this is the thing. You guys don't even know. I have health problems. I've had chronic health problems my whole life that I never told you about. It's not the back injury, it's other stuff. And I don't let it affect me, even though I have chronic health problems that I have. I don't tell you about them, and I don't let them try to hinder what I do here on stream or whatever. Okay. But I've been having a few complications that have been negatively affecting me. Let's put it that way. To the point where long-term, could it affect me really badly? Yes. Not yet, but long-term it could. And I am worried about that, and that's always going to be something. Health is something we all worry about all the time, right? So I'm not going to go into detail, but FYI, that's one of the things that's been affecting me. And yes, eventually it could really negatively affect me, all right? But the other thing that's been happening at the same time as that, let's see how I begin here, all right? Just listen to the whole story. Don't assume and jump off or anything. Listen to the whole story. Here's the whole story. When I started, way back when I started doing YouTube for a job back in 2011, okay?
I'm more about looking forward than looking back.
I knew that this was going to be something different, something weird. It's not like I'm having a normal job, a 9-to-5 job. It's not like it's easy to keep track of all your finances and everything, right? It's going to be very difficult. I'm going to have to keep an expense, a running budget. You know, here's all the expenses I spent on the business that maybe I can, you know, do a write-off on my taxes. Here's my money. Do I want to keep a separate bank account? Very, very complicated to do what I did.
Wow.
All right, it is. And every year, it's a nightmare to try to figure out at that one time of the year when I have to figure out, gee, what do I owe taxes on this? Do I owe that? Do I get a refund this year? Do I roll it over? How many expenses can I write off? And so, when I started way back when, making money doing YouTube full-time, I got a tax attorney to be my full-time tax attorney. Now, I didn't just get any old tax attorney.
I did research.
All right, I did research. This is back when I lived in Connecticut, back in around, I'd say, was it? I'm trying to remember if it was 2011. I don't remember the first year that I actually did this. Okay. So, I did research. I found a guy in Connecticut, 30 years experience, actually taught accounting and finance at universities before, okay, and had these awards and degrees, and it wasn't his full-time job to do it 100% of the time, but it was one of his sources of income that during a year he had clients who he would do their taxes for. And when I lived in Connecticut, you know, from 2011 to 2014 when I was doing this as a full-time job, my taxes were done through him. And every year what I would do is I put together this spreadsheet of all my expenses and send all the information to him. And he basically put it together so that it would be easy, all right? An easy system, no problems, nothing, you know. Every year I just sent him the information. He has a couple questions. Boom, we file, we're done, all right? And I pay a shit ton of taxes. Now, one of the major reasons why I wanted to get out of Connecticut is because Connecticut has what's called a state personal income tax, meaning whatever you earn in the state of Connecticut, the state takes income away from you every year as a tax. So does the federal government. Now, the state doesn't take nearly as much as the federal government, okay? But they take a decent chunk. And I was like, man, I could literally leave the state of Connecticut and move anywhere that doesn't have a state income tax, or I could move to a state that has a much lower income tax and pay less taxes. And what would be the loss? You know, I work from home. I live stream, right? So, you know, what's the big deal if I were to move out of Connecticut and go somewhere else and do this? I'd be basically just making more money doing it because I don't have to pay all these exorbitant.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is why people believe that he, which is what it seems like he did, he basically committed tax evasion. Any people move all the time for various reasons. Phil was trying to move out specifically because of taxes. That doesn't actually mean that he's committing tax evasion. But what he ended up doing when he actually finally got to the state of Washington is what is shaky. He said he did this research to find this tax accountant, which eventually all of a sudden gets turned into an attorney. And he did his research finding him, but you're telling me he didn't do any research moving from state to state? Or is it that he found a loophole somewhere that since he wasn't providing, since he wasn't actually peddling any type of merchandise, quote unquote, and his was more of an online business, that's what made him think, oh, well, I can probably get away with not qualifying for this business tax. We'll see. But just something to think about, ladies and gentlemen.
Taxes that I'm paying in Connecticut. So at the time, all right, I did some research on what states did not have personal income tax. I started looking for houses. You all remember this. If you're longtime viewers, you remember this. It was like 2013 and then 2014, I actually started house hunting. And at that time, I was in constant communication with my tax attorney saying, gee, you know, what would happen if I were to move, say, to Washington or to Texas or to one of these states that doesn't have a personal income tax? He said, basically, that was it. You just don't pay personal income tax. You just pay the federal. You're good to go. I was like, wow, that's great. You know, that would be really exceptional. And so as things progressed, right, things progressed more and more. Eventually, I came out here in April of 2014 to Seattle area, Washington. I saw several homes while I was out here with my then girlfriend. And we decided on this house. We thought this house was the perfect fit for us. And before I ever took one single step towards buying this house, okay, I up front asked my tax attorney two important questions. I said, number one, are there any other taxes that I'm going to have to pay if I move to the state of Washington outside of the federal income tax? That's number one. He said, no, it's just a personal federal income tax you'll have to pay.
That's his first mistake. Why didn't he actually just look it up himself? Why didn't you just take a few, before he even asked his tax attorney, which is actually his accountant, why didn't he just take a few minutes to look it up? Hey, if you were too lazy, why didn't you just ask Panda to look it up for you? It would have been a couple minutes and she wouldn't mind doing it. Or is it that she already knew there was, and yet again, he thought, oh, well, since I'm not actually selling anything and it's an online-based business, quote unquote, that I'm not affected by that business tax. Something to think about. Let's go.
Number two, I asked him, in writing, I still have the fucking email. I said, since I'm moving to Washington State, doesn't it make sense that I should get a tax attorney out here who basically has more knowledge of the state laws and stuff like that? To, you know, they'll be more knowledgeable about that. So basically, I'm going to say goodbye to you. You know, after this year of taxes, once I move to Washington in the summer, you know, I'm going to basically not need your services anymore. That makes sense, right? And he came back to me and said,
oh no, I'm still able to handle all of your tax concerns. No problem whatsoever. You'll still be fine. Don't worry about it. I can take care of it. You know, I'll do the research. I'm well versed, and we'll take care of all your. I'll still take care of your taxes for you, no matter what. Okay.
Okay, right? I'm not the professional here. He is. This is his job. He's a tax attorney. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating, guys. I've paid this guy ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, 1 year I think I paid him, I'm not exaggerating, $1,500 to do my taxes.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about what he just said there. He's the professional, I'm not, and I already pay him an enormous amount of money in taxes. If you're Phil, and money is essentially what drives you, do you really think Phil would want to pay another tax attorney in another state that might even that may cost him even more money? Or would he just stick with who he knows? Do you go ahead and go with the enemy that you don't know? Because anybody who's trying to take money from Phil is the enemy. Or do you stay with the enemy that you do know? Just something to think about. DSP News, special report.
Okay. That that was the year that it was the most convoluted. I had like the most income streams, and I had all this shit going on, and it was a lot of extra work, and he had to get it together. All right, I paid this guy a ridiculous amount of money to do my taxes. Now you may not realize this: all tax attorneys cost about that much. All right. The only other alternative is to do your taxes yourself, which I never would have done right. I would have fucked them up. I wouldn't have done the right write-offs and stuff. Or you could go to like a place like Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block, and they charge around like $500. But again, they're not full-time tax attorneys like this guy is. Okay.
That's funny though, because you never told us before that he was actually a tax attorney. You always said that he was the person who did your taxes. He was an accountant. He wasn't a tax attorney until all of a sudden you have this problem. So either we're talking about two different people, or we're talking about the same person who referred you to a tax accountant, or to a tax attorney in your own state, and then you flip the narrative, and magically the guy in Connecticut this accountant turned out to be the attorney. Shouts out to Doom who poses that particular scenario.
So that's what happened. I moved across the country to Washington State. As of, what was that? I think it was July 2014. I was told, don't worry about state income taxes anymore. Obviously, you're not going to owe Connecticut. You don't live there anymore, right? And no big deal. Just pay the federal, and you're good to go. So I did that from, middle of 2014 until now. And, everything's fine. No problems or nothing, all right? You're not going to believe this. You're seriously not going to believe this. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This whole situation I'm in, yes, it is, I'll tell you right now, my tax attorney is at fault for some of this stuff to happen, but wait till you hear the full story. You're not going to fucking believe it. Are you ready? Get ready. Hold on to your butts. So I noticed about early on this year. Are you ready? Get ready. Hold on to your butts. So I noticed about early on this year, from early to middle 2017, I started to get all these extra mailings in the mail, right? Magazines, ads, treat.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so let me cut in for just a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so you heard the first segment right there from Phil's mouth. He asked this man, who is his tax attorney, if he had any taxes that he needed to worry about outside of out of a state tax when he moves to Washington. And even brought up the concern, as I had said, should he find a attorney in his own state now, the new state that he's living in Washington State, to handle his affairs. And he says no. This man says, no, I can still handle all the needs that you've had. We'll continue this arrangement. Phil says, you're the professional, so be it. Sounds great. Okay. So that right there is the scenario. This is what leads to the situation at hand, so to speak. Now, this is where things get a little bit complicated and kind of shaky, so bear with me. Now, we have the situation with what were some of the warning signs that Phil had that he may have actually been considered a registered business in the state of Washington? Because somewhere down the line in the business office in Washington State, he's on paper for something. At least that's how he owes, obviously. So somewhere down the line, this situation comes about. Now, we're going to get into the next segment where Phil talks about the publications that were sent to his home. These right here are business magazines, business journals, things like that. This is stuff that would go to people who are registered as business owners in a particular personal business owners in the states that they live in, respectfully. Or if you work for a corporation, you'll see some of the same stuff for, different types of equipment, so on and so forth. All right. Phil says he never signed up for any of these publications at all. Never. They were just sent to him all of a sudden, out of nowhere. Now, I'll let Phil speak for himself, but for right now, I'll go ahead and take the time because someone has to. He says that he would get these publications in, it would fill his mailbox up basically every 3 days, and he would just throw the magazines away or shred them. For one, you never thought about maybe looking inside these magazines. There's usually a 1-800 number or something along those lines, and calling the number on there and say, hey, could you please stop sending me these publications? Which they will do. If they don't, it's considered harassment. So he could have done that, but he didn't. He let it ride. He said he didn't understand why they were being sent to him, but he let it ride. Okay. Another thing that Phil won't bring up is the fact that the things that he writes off on his taxes, which in other videos he's talked about that. So he writes off things as business expenses on his taxes, but you're not registered as a business. On top of that, ladies and gentlemen, while Phil was in Seattle, in Washington State, he had some problems. They had some hangups, which required him to take some new credit cards out. It's alleged that he had about 20 or so. I don't know if there was really that many, but they said he had quite a few of those. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, it is said that he had some business loans. Now, I had been looking for the SOK video, because they were the ones who initially broke this, where they actually found in one of his videos where he had said this. I couldn't find the video, so I apologize that I won't be able to have that soundbite for you. But Phil has said, at least on one occasion, if not two, that he had to take out some business loans. Allegedly two. Now, we don't know if Phil took out both business loans himself, or he took out one and then Leanna took out one. If that's the case, and some of you in my comment section have mentioned this, how was he able to take out business loans without any collateral, or without showing that he actually is the proprietor of a business, as well as Panda? Can someone explain that to me? So that means he had to provide some type of proof to the bank or the credit union that, hey, I am a business and you can trust me to pay this money, because he would have had to put something up for collateral. Yes. With that being said, he has to be registered somewhere, right, for the bank or the credit union to verify that Philip Burnell is the proprietor of a business somewhere, or he himself had to provide some type of documentation. Yes. And if so, the bank would have had to be able to backtrack that, right? They would have wanted some verification. Anybody could come in with fraudulent documents, so someone would have had to come in and show that, hey, I am the proprietor of a business. This is to prove that. Yes? Yes. Okay then. Phil has not brought that up to us, ladies and gentlemen, on how he was able to obtain these business loans. Okay? But somewhere, it's there that he has said this. Like I said, I apologize that I do not have the video. And I know, you're like, Golden, that means you would have been a reliable and responsible newsman. I know. So in a lot of ways, it's probably good that I didn't find it, but still, ladies and gentlemen, I want to try to bring you at least some of the facts, if not all of them. But that would make me professional. And I guess that would go against my gimmick. Called a conflict of interest, I guess. Let's continue. With that being said, Phil will also, in the next sound bite, I will bring it up. Phil says that when he's being investigated, when he finally gets contacted by the bureau, by the agency that's ready to collect their money on him, he's like, "How did you sniff me out? How did you find me?" And the gentleman on the other line, the tax agent, basically says, "Mr. Burnell, we checked in every business publication in this state you're on. You're on every single one of them." And Phil's like, "Oh, well, that makes sense. So someone falsely signed me up for all these publications, and that's how this happened." Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring up something that I believe Snort Burnell, as well as Mr. Stuffs, have brought up respectfully. I believe both of them have. I'm just going to give them both credit either way. How is it that someone was able to get a hold of your name and address and register you as a business and get all these publications, and and they didn't have to show any type of identification? I want you to think about that for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Who can take your name, the name of any one of you and all of you who are listening right now, your first and last name, your address, and your point of contact for a phone number, and go to a place and register you for different type of business publications and just make that happen? It seems kind of funny, isn't it? Seems a bit interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something that Phil's also leaving out. It's not just the publications that was able to snuff him out. Somewhere down the line, someone actually, Phil does say that someone left an anonymous tip to that agency that, hey, this guy right here is registered as a business and he's not doing his business properly, which is another reason why they they decided to investigate him. It wasn't just the publications, but there's something else, ladies and gentlemen. Someone may have, and I say may have taken time to go down to the business office in Connecticut and put some documentation of Phil on the book somewhere. Possibly. Now, how does someone do that without having Phil's ID? Without having his information in hand? How do you do that? It doesn't seem very possible, right? Well, that's neither here nor there. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, that right there led to Phil being exposed. That led to Phil being responsible for the situation that he's in now. For the problem that comes about. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear from Phil's mouth basically what I said because I want some verification. And then we're going to get into a little bit of the theory aspect of it on who did this. Okay? So we're going to go into that now. It'll be just a moment.
Early on this year, probably early to middle 2017, I started to get all these extra mailings in the mail, right? Magazines, ads, trade papers. I'm talking like construction magazine, science, scientist, doctor, publishing, right? And I'm looking at this shit right now. I know I didn't subscribe to any of it. And it says on it, on the mailing, addressed to DSP Gaming. Interesting, right? So I start getting all this mail about DSP Gaming. And I'm like, why am I getting all this mail I never signed up for DSP Gaming? And like I said, it's all business-related, trade-related mailings. I'm not exaggerating, folks. I'm not even exaggerating. Right now, every 3 days, my mailbox is full. Because whoever this was that did this signed me up for like every possible free publication that there is regarding like business and trade. And I'm getting every 3 days a stack of mail this high that fills the mailbox. So every 3 days I have to go empty the mailbox because someone did this to me. Okay?
That's insanity.
So that happened, and I've been putting up with that all year. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. I just got to put up with it and throw it out. That's why I do. I shred it. I shred it all. It goes to the recycling. All of a sudden, oh God, now I can't remember if it was even late August or early September at this point. All right? I get a letter in the mail stating that due to some information that has come across the desk of someone, that they suspect
that I, Phil Burnell, own a business called DSP Gaming, and I'm doing business in the state of Washington, but I'm not doing it properly. I never registered the business, which is legally required in the state of Washington, and I'm not paying taxes. Anything for this, right?
Now, to clarify, not personal income tax. There's no state personal income tax in the state of Washington. However, in the state of Washington, they have what's apparently, which I don't know, I'm not a tax attorney, it's called, it's some kind of a business, I don't even know the technical thing about it, some kind of a business tax, that if you're self-employed in Washington, and if you fit certain criteria, like you make a certain amount of money, you get income from certain sources, or you receive certain tax documents from the people who you have contractual agreements with, you're required to register as a business and to pay this business tax in the state of Washington, okay? So I get this letter, and I'm looking at it like, what the hell is this, man? Are you serious? Like, what could this be? Could this be true? This is bullshit. And I immediately read it. I'm like, well, I don't own my own business. I don't, I'm not registered. I don't own my own business. I don't. Legally, there's no business out there that's called DSP Gaming. DSP Gaming is just a YouTube channel, right? There's no business called DSP Gaming. It doesn't exist. So I knew right from the criteria listed in the letter that this wasn't correct, that something was not right here. So I called the guy back and left him a voicemail explaining. I said, listen, you got it wrong. I don't own my own business. I'm not buying or selling. I'm not doing a service. It's internet-based videos that people put ads on. It's way different from what you're describing in your letter. Therefore, I don't think I'm qualified under. You don't have to worry about it or whatever.
Here you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, right here, Phil basically exposes himself, I believe, as well as many, on what the situation was. He says he's using the loophole that there is no business called DSP Gaming, even though there is a DSP Enterprises, which is linked to Comcast. That's the people who provide him his cable, internet, and so on and so forth. Because, remember, he wanted the business line for the faster internet. Well, to do that, he had to put a business name down, allegedly. Phil says that he didn't have a business to put down, and they said, oh, just put down anything. Now, keep in mind, your telecommunication company, especially if you have a business line, the business agency in his particular state probably pulled from them too. And were like, okay, let's see what you guys have on paper if this guy has a business line. It's possible. I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying it's possible. Now, there's a bit of a conflict of interest. He says that there is no DSP Gaming. There is no business under the name of DSP Gaming, but he does have a business line under DSP Enterprises. And the next thing is, oh, well, I don't provide a service. I'm not buying or selling anything, so I don't fall under the criterias of owning a business. It's all ad revenue. It's all online. It's something completely different. Is he a fucking idiot? You are paid to provide a service. That's what you're getting paid for. He tried to downplay what he does, so he didn't believing that that was the loophole he needed, so he didn't have to pay taxes. The fact that money was getting tight and Leanna had to go and get a job also could be it could be his attempt to have someone in the house having some type of having some type of income coming in that can be taxed right away. Hence the reason why Leanna getting a job worked out. Kinda. But let's continue. Those are just some theories I'm throwing at you.
So he came back to me and he says, well, I got to do my due diligence here, okay? So at that point, I tried to get my tax attorney from Connecticut involved. All right, I tried to say, what's going on here? You know, this guy is saying that maybe I qualify for having to register as a business and pay business tax and all of this. What's going on? All right, at the same time, I was still in contact with this guy who apparently was investigating me. So I asked him, I said, you know, I'm just curious, how did this happen? You know, how did you find out about DSP Gaming? Because it's not registered anywhere or anything like that. And he said, well,
we got an anonymous tip about a company called DSP Gaming that apparently was operating in Washington State, and the real reason that we got a whiff of you is because you're on a mailing list for small businesses in the state. Like, you're registered on all of them. If you take a look, it's DSP Gaming. It says you're the sole proprietor, and it lists your address, and they signed you up for all of these. I said, well, that makes sense, man.
Now, his excuse will be, oh, well, you know, my full name and address have been disclosed for a very long time, so that's how they got my name, and that's how they got my address. Okay, fair enough. Here is a particular problem, though, that he's going to have a hard time explaining away. Not just the business loans and everything that I talked to you guys about, but the fact that he's writing off business expenses on his taxes every year. I would assume these people can pull that up, or they can at least contact someone who would have access to that. To verify, hey, we got a guy here who's allegedly runs a small business. Can you guys tell us, from a tax standpoint, is it possible that he's asked for, he's seen if he qualifies for any business grants? Has he asked for any type of business write-offs? Can you guys verify some of that for us? And I'm sure someone can. And I'm sure someone did. But yet again, Phil probably left that out. But I want to throw that out there just to be on the safe side. Let's continue.
I'm stupid.
Because that's why I'm getting these contractor magazines. That's why I'm getting all these business-related mailings that I didn't sign up for. That's why I'm getting them all. Someone went out there with my information and registered me as a small business on all these free mailing lists. And then whoever it is that takes care of, the state tax or business tax in Washington got an anonymous tip and went out and looked and said, oh, look at this. If they're registered for these mailings, they must be real. And then they started investigating me.
Unbelievable.
That's what's going on. So that's what happened initially. So I go to my tax attorney and I say, listen, we got to get you in the loop. You've got to talk to this guy because I don't know anything about this. You told me you were taking care of this when I moved out here. Obviously, it sounds like this guy's mistaken. Let's figure this out together. And as I told him, that actually had a thing, it's like an authorization form that my tax attorney would have to fill out in order to communicate with my personal info. It's like permission for him to give my personal info to this guy who's inquiring about business tax, okay? I send him the form and he goes, Phil, I don't know if I'm comfortable filling out this form. I really feel that at this point, since it seems like, this might be something serious, you should get a tax attorney in the state of Washington.
That's your fault. You're the one who created that economic situation, and I'm like, what the fuck? Are you fucking serious? I'm not a whiny baby.
Keep in mind, this guy, 30 years experience as a tax attorney, taking thousands of dollars from me, all right, to do my taxes over the years. He blatantly, I have it in writing from him, in an email that I saved on purpose. in writing, it says, you do not have to get another attorney. I will still be your tax attorney. He's taking on all that responsibility.
If that's the case, did you present that to your current tax attorney in Washington State? If you did, that in truth would exonerate you, at least to some degree, some of the fees and some other things that are probably going to accumulate on you. You're probably still going to owe the money that you owe, but you could very well sue this gentleman, the tax attorney in Connecticut, for some of the residuals, because he basically, under false pretenses, put you in a position that you didn't have to do something that you really did. Granted, personal responsibility and personal accountability still plays a factor in the situation, but that's neither here nor there.
Me moving and doing my taxes properly in the state of Washington.
I'm a brain dead idiot.
Literally says, well, I think you should just get another tax attorney now in Washington. So I went back to him, as politely as I possibly could, because it wasn't very polite, and I told him, absolutely not. You're responsible for this. You were the one. I have it in writing. You can't try to, weasel your way out of it. I have it in writing stating that you were taking on this responsibility, and I think that you need to fill out this form and start talking to this guy right away. Okay? So he did. My tax attorney filled out the form, apparently sent it to the guy and said, I'm willing to talk with you or whatever. So then I went back to the guy who was investigating me for this business tax, and he even said, I recommend at this point, since it seems like your attorney from Connecticut is trying to shirk responsibility, you go get an attorney in Washington who's going to be able to analyze the situation, or else, I'm going to end up holding you liable, and maybe you're not, You got to do your due diligence. Cover yourself. Okay.
Exactly. Cover yourself. If you had done that 3 years ago, you wouldn't have had a problem. But that wasn't a priority of yours. Hence the reason why you're starting to become a very strong candidate for this being your fault. But let's continue.
Okay, so I did two things. The first thing I did is I did research legally online, and I said, I wonder what the liability is of a tax attorney who blatantly lies in an email and says that they're going to do due diligence and basically negligent, because let's say, for example, the state of Washington finds me guilty of not filing business taxes for 3 years, right? Because now at this point, that was, August, September, so it was around 3 years at that point of unfiled business taxes, if that's the case. What's the liability on the tax attorney who screwed up? And I found my answers. The answers are simple. Basically, I'm responsible for the money, the actual tax money. I would be responsible 100% for the tax money that's owed to the state. Okay, no matter what, because I owed it if I owed it. All right? Now, what I could do is I could sue my former tax attorney.
Why am I toxic?
For fees, damages, and interest. Because basically, when you have unpaid taxes for an extended period of time, you get fees that are associated with that, late fees, as well as interest that's accrued on that makes it even higher. Plus, there may be, let's say, for example, I had to get another tax attorney and I had all this cost and everything. I could try to sue my former tax attorney for all of that. Now, that would take forever. It would take years. It would have to go through claims court. It's basically going to be, it would be a very time-consuming and an expensive process. And the problem is, my former tax attorney is in Connecticut, so it would be a nightmare for me to do that because I'm not there, right? So basically, I'm shot. I don't know how I could get anything out of my former tax attorney because I don't have, number one, I just told you guys, I'm strapped for cash. I'm literally living paycheck to paycheck. I have just enough money to pay for everything I need to pay for. How am I going to have enough money and time to sue this guy when I have to keep streaming and keep paying the bills and everything? It's not possible. I can't do it, okay? The other thing I did, all right, the other thing I did is I got a new tax attorney, all right? Now, this new tax attorney, no surprise, all right? No surprise. Very expensive. All right. No lie. I'm not gonna lie. $800 just to retain the services of this attorney, which I don't have. I can put it. Guess what? On a credit card, which I desperately am running out of credit. I have almost no credit left. I'm to the point where I'm massively overextended. The way it was working was I was paying everything down to the point where every 4 months I could pay my taxes, which would bring all my credit cards and shit back up, and then I would pay it down gradually. And then the taxes would do again, it would go up, So I'm on the ends of my extension here. I'm completely overextended. I have no liquidity. I'm to the point where I can't afford anything, okay? So I have to get a new tax attorney. I had a meeting with this tax attorney. Didn't tell you guys, but this was all happening behind the scenes. That's what I mean. All this shit was happening behind the scenes for months. And basically the tax attorney told me he thinks I do owe some kind of business tax. He doesn't necessarily know how much, because there's some factors involved. What's qualified as a certain kind of income versus another kind of income? What's business taxable and what's not? And in addition to that, the fact that because now I haven't paid business taxes for 3 years.
That's insanity.
Since I've lived in Washington. There's not only going to be the taxes that I owe, but there's going to be those fees, interest. And he says, I told him the whole situation. And he basically said, listen, this is extenuating circumstances where you, number one, there's no way legally you could have enough knowledge to know what you owed for taxes here or not. Number two, you have it in writing from a 30-year experienced tax attorney in Connecticut saying that he was doing it right and he would do it. So basically, you have extenuating circumstances to prove your innocence. So somehow he might be able to get some of what I owe disbanded, okay? But the problem here is that there's still going to be a chunk of money, all right, that apparently I'm going to owe. And the question is, what's the amount going to be? We don't know. It's probably, and he gave me an estimate. He says, just a rough estimate. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars. It's not going to be $10,000, but it could be thousands of dollars. And the problem is, with the interest, fees, all that's going to be associated with not paying this for years, it could end up being way more. It could balloon because of that, all right?
I'm here to play games.
So, basically, I'm in a position where I'm screwed. And I said, so what's the next step? What in the holy hell do we do? He said, well, what we need to do is we need to talk with this guy from the business department or whatever, work with him, figure out exactly what he wants us to do, go with his wishes, and basically get you to consider what's called tax compliant status, all right? So basically, take care of the back end shit before I worry about the future shit, okay? Now, what he thought is he's saying, since this is a extenuating circumstance, and I told him all about my finances and everything. I was like, listen, sorry, I just don't have the money. Like, if you right now put down a $5,000 to $7,000 tax bill in front of me and said, Phil, you owe this, I have no money to pay it. I don't have enough credit to pay it. Nothing. Couldn't pay it. There's nothing I could do to pay you. It would just go delinquent, And he's like, well, what I think I'm gonna try to do, all right, is I'm going to try to get it so that whatever you owe ends up being on a payment plan. He says, I've seen payment plans that have gone as long as 5 years. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that for you. Maybe I can get you on a 3-year. But what I'm going to try to explain to this guy during this process is there's no way you have the money to just pay him. So if he wants his money, he has to wait. And he's going to have to be working with you because it wasn't your fault. You didn't know you owed this money,
Now, why is Phil talking like he owes this money to an individual, just a single person, instead of an actual department that's actually collecting this? He's not paying this to a guy. He's paying it to the state. Now, granted, that's just miswording on Phil's part. You know what I mean. But the devil's in the details, ladies and gentlemen. So, something to keep in mind.
If I had known I owed the money, I would have budgeted. I would have had it and been paying it all along, right? So that's one issue. The other issue, all right, is that now moving forward, I also have to start paying this tax. And I've been told that basically whatever this tax is going to be for the year of 2017, which we have no idea yet, it hasn't been calculated yet, is going to be due on January 31st of 2018. What's it going to be? Could it be $1,000? $3,000? I don't even know what it is. And again, I don't have it. You know what I mean? I just don't have it.
I need that money. I really do. I need that money to pay my bills.
Yep.
Now the good news is this is not absolutely world-ending horrendous yet. All right. The good news is a few things. Number one, and no, by the way, this is not the IRS. People are saying IRS. The IRS is from the federal government. That's not what this is at all. This is completely different. It's state-based. That's why when people are saying, oh, it's the IRS. No, it's not the IRS. The IRS has nothing to do with this. And by the way, thank God, I confirmed with the new tax attorney, my taxes are good in the federal level. Like he says, everything here's right. He's like, this guy did everything perfect at the federal level. It was just he didn't file anything for business taxes when you moved, and that's his fault.
Now, let's stop you right there. So I want you to think about that, ladies and gentlemen. His federal was all taken care of, but Phil's state tax wasn't taken care of, but Phil was providing him with all the documentation. So in turn, this guy can only work off of what's given to him, yes? Right? And since this guy works out of Connecticut, he knows for sure that there's going to be a state tax, in Connecticut. But this business tax that Phil's talking about, this guy wouldn't know about it if Phil never brought it up. And Phil knew about it, but he thought he didn't qualify. So who's really at fault? Just something to think about.
Okay. But, federal level, you're good. So, thank God 2 tax attorneys now are telling me that my major taxes were done properly. Fuck, that would have killed me if I thought that that was the case. My God, can you imagine that? That would have been tens of thousands of dollars, and that would have been it. It
would have been it. So it's funny how this guy didn't mess you up on the federal level, but he missed the state level or the business tax in Washington State. Doesn't that not sound odd a little bit? This is someone who prepares taxes, and he can only work off the information that Phil gives him. So if Phil provides all of his documentation saying that I was paid, this guy doesn't know if it's all, if it's all freelance work or whatever the case may be. He just knows what he can just calculate what Phil owes. He wouldn't actually, he's not going to step out of his realm, so to speak, and inquire on, well, what are you doing to actually make this money? He just needs to calculate what Phil owes. That's what he's paid for. Yes? That sounds about right, so to speak. Now, granted, this guy is allegedly a friend of the family, so he may be a little bit more diligent, but that's obviously not what happened. So is it not possible that Phil told this guy that, hey, what I'm doing is online based, I don't have a business, it's just I'm paid through a company and they pay me? Just let's keep going, but I just want to bring it up.
It would be the end for me completely. The thing I'm nervous about, two things, okay? Number one, what's going to happen when they finally determine how much I actually owe for these supposed back taxes, and how am I going to pay it? What's the payment plan going to be? How much a month? Especially now that I'm living month to month as it is with the money that I'm making. And number two, what's this oncoming looming payment going to be on January 31st that I'm going to owe? Because I don't know yet. I'm supposed to find out probably sometime in December. All right? So, ladies and gentlemen, the good news is, at least these past couple of months have been good. If you guys haven't noticed, things have been up. I've been telling you guys things have been up. I just did that special promotional event with Twitch a month ago. And
okay, ladies and gentlemen, so I think we have everything we need out of Phil. Everything else is just going to be extra bullshit to draw it in. So let's go ahead and try to get into the theory aspect of this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so for the theory aspect, who was it that screwed up on this, and who is it that possibly put Phil in this bad situation? Let's go ahead and look at the usual suspects. Taking a bit of a cue from something that I did recently. So, as it pertains to that, it's very possible that Leanna, Panda, Tyrone's favorite squeeze, in a jealous rage on how she was mistreated, possibly did this. It's very possible that this young lady was like, you know what, Phil? Fuck you. You did wrong by me. It's time to get my payback. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably like, well, wait a second, Golden, or GTG, call me what you like. She's been gone for a while. Why would she want to drum all that up now? Well, that's a very interesting question. At the time of my recording, ladies and gentlemen, Phil has a new squeeze. He has a new lady in his life, a new maid, a new lover, a new woman to take care of him, and more importantly than all those three things, those previous things I mentioned, a new source of income. It is possible that Panda Leanna, has been replaced. 5 years of that woman's life she gave to Phil, and he casted her aside like you would cast away a pregnant maid that you pumped a baby in, Arnold Schwarzenegger. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, would she not have some motive? I'm not accusing her, ladies and gentlemen. I am just throwing that out there. Is it possible that she would have some type of pittance in this? Would she feel that she had been wronged in such a way that she might consider wanting to do this? I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. The next suspect is, his name still rings bells to this day. He's, considered rather infamous. And his intelligence network, his control, his manipulation is something to be seen, I gotta say. I have a soundbite for you that I think will express in some way, as best as I can, what's the word I'm looking for? How fierce this person could be. With all due respect, of course. Just a second.
He's supposed to be Turkish. Some say his father was German. Nobody ever believed he was real. Nobody ever knew him or saw anybody that ever worked directly for him. But to hear Kobayashi tell it, anybody could have worked for Seze. You never knew. That was his power. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. One story the guys told me, the story I believe, was from his days in Turkey. There was a gang of Hungarians that wanted their own mob. They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't. After a while, they come into power and then they come after Soze. Soze looks over the faces of his family. Then he showed these men of will what will really was. See his family dead, then live another day after this. He lets the last Hungarian go. He waits until his wife and kids are in the ground, and then he goes after the rest of the mob. He kills their kids, he kills their wives, he kills their parents and their parents' friends. He burns down the houses they live in, and the stores they work in. He kills people that owe them money. And like that, he's gone. Underground. Nobody's ever seen him since. He becomes a myth, a spook story that criminals tell their kids at night. Rat on your pop, and Kaiser Soze will get you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was that was a bit excessive on my part, but I just want to try to set the mood for you on what this man has done this year, I should say, or what he's alleged to have done, I should say. And bring it all into, just try to bring us all full circle. Is it possible that Freddy Boy has decided to go ahead and wage an attack on Phil? He's lost a little bit in the situation that has come about. Is it possible that he decided to stretch his hand to show Phil that he's not safe? And by doing so, doing this. Is it possible? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I would say no, in my own personal opinion, because the way this was gone about was kind of sloppy. And even possibly, well, I wouldn't even say sloppy. It doesn't fit his particular MO. He's a bit more cleaner, and whoever it is, we probably will never find out anyway, so that kind of falls into Freddy's mystique. But at the same time, I feel like he probably could have coordinated this differently. He would have had a different wage of attack. Because I certainly would have done it slightly differently if this was me. So, there you go. Who else could possibly have done it? Could it have been other ex-members of the SOK? I couldn't tell you. I doubt it. They've been pretty quiet for a little while now. So, I mean, is it possible? Sure, anything's possible. But is it? I don't know. I don't think so. And I'm not here to accuse anybody of it either way. I'm just here to throw out theories to you. Now, as of today, an interesting bit of chat log has come out where apparently Phil was throwing some shots at his old chums back in Connecticut. Could one of them, we will name no names, decided to go ahead and take the helm, and decide that I'm going after him? No, probably not. It sounds fitting, but probably not. So that's 3 of the usual suspects knocked out. Now, who else? Now you have to kind of look at the haters and the detractors. Do you really see any of them doing any of that? To be honest, is there possibly another rogue in our midst? Is it possible that there's another sleeper agent that we didn't know from a particular group who's still out there working his or her magic from behind the scenes? Possibly. Is it possible that one of the current groups that we have out, I don't know if there really is any current detractor groups, to be honest with you, but is it possible that one of the current OG detractors have decided to go ahead and pry Phil just to see what you can get out of him? Yet again, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I'm not here to blame anybody. Or is it possible, ladies and gentlemen, that it's Phil's greed, his incompetence, and his sense of entitlement that has put him in this particular scenario? I would be a bit biased if I said that it was Phil. But in truth, Phil's greatest enemy, greater than Leanna, greater than any of the detractors and trolls, greater than even Freddie Boy himself, is Phil. No one hurts Phil more than Phil. No one hurts DSP more than DSP. The person who has Darkside Phil out back lashing him every night is Darkside Phil. His sense of entitlement, his sense of personal gain, and the lack of empathy and value for the people and the things around him makes him the prime suspect for whose fault this is. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that I'm here to provide you late, unreliable coverage and news, because there are much better people out there who, present Phil's bullshit to you on a day-to-day basis. I know that because I watched them, because I'm a fan. I was a fan before I started this. But in truth, it's more than likely it's Phil. There is enough evidence that I believe I've presented to you, so to speak. I can't say that I've presented you guys hard copies of stuff and documentation, but I can say that I think I can say with a vote of confidence that Phil screwed himself over. Phil put himself in this situation. Leanna, Fred, the detractors, his friends at Connecticut didn't screw DSP. DSP screwed DSP. Now that's a fact that we can all live with, because most of us already know that. But Phil can't. Phil believes that he's been wronged. He's been wronged by his tax attorney, aka his actually accountant. He feels that he's been wronged. He's been faulted. And poor me, now I have to suffer these consequences. I have to deal with the fallout. But in truth, though, Phil isn't dealing with the fallout, is he? He's making his fans and his supporters do it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is that actually fair? Who enables Phil to continue to go on like this? At the time of me recording this, it's calculated that he's made upwards of $5,000 to $6,000 plus. I don't have verified numbers at this moment, but it's somewhere around that number. It's been well over a week since he's announced this. And then you throw this new girlfriend on top of it, or source of revenue as I like to call her. It only ups the amount. Now, at current, ladies and gentlemen, he's on vacation. It is Tuesday. It is Tuesday, December 5th. And Phil should be on vacation at current with his new girlfriend. I actually will have a video coming out soon where we're going to go over his apparent travel plans and some of the problems he was having. We're going to go over that in a little while in a separate video. Ladies and gentlemen, how is it that a man who's going through very serious tax problems, having time for his new girlfriend, and to be going on a vacation, whether a staycation, where they're going to a nice hotel or resort or whatever the case may be, or staying at home and just buying a bunch of stuff? How is it that a man who has said it himself in his own words is very nervous about his situation, that wasn't his fault, wasn't the fans' fault, but yet he expects the fans to pay for it? Because he's not. And the reason why I can say that to you is because he himself has said, I don't have the money to pay for this. On top of that, ladies and gentlemen, is it not interesting that this man is trying to collect an amount of money when he doesn't even know what he owes? Isn't it funny how he owes an amount that's due on the 31st of January, and yet these people didn't calculate and tell him how much it is? There's something still very wrong with the situation, ladies and gentlemen. Even after everything that I've presented to you, have I orchestrated this well enough to where the picture that needs to be painted was painted? Probably not. I'm unprofessional. But this does lead into part 3. Is this all truth or a lie? Now, I don't want to draw any conclusions right now. I want to leave that to you guys. The third video will come up. It'll probably be the shorter of the 3. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. But I want you to look at the current situation. Phil is on vacation. He's out apparently enjoying himself with his new main squeeze. There's obviously money that's going to be spent. Money that should be going to his taxes, to his obligations. But instead, it's going to go to it's going to go to provide the fun and entertainment for him and his new girlfriend. Doesn't sound very responsible, yes? It sounds like a man who feels like he is owed more than what he is. And he may actually owe some taxes. That part may very well be true, but he may not owe as much as he says. He may only owe $1,000, give or take, while the rest of the fees and the interest and everything was wiped clean. If so, then he is basically sitting pretty on the rest of the money that was raised up for to help him out with this situation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is dishonest at best. I do not have any proof at current if that is the case, but I'm just saying. Now, at the time of this recording, 2 people in my comment section, as well as somebody anonymously, sent me a very interesting source. You're probably wondering, Golden, what are you talking about? 2 videos ago, I had made the suggestion that there should be a paper trail if DSP really owed all this money. That he should be registered somewhere as a business. And in turn, that paper trail should lead you somewhere which would be considered a public document. There should be a paper trail. And if so, that would validate this tax thing in some way, shape, or form. Ladies and gentlemen, today I actually saw Phil's business license. Now, ladies and gentlemen, because of the fact even though his personal information is out there, even though his full name, his address, all that's out there, I will not be putting out the documentation. The reason why is because, in truth, it's no different than really doxing him. It just wouldn't be proper. I don't feel, for what I do, I'm here to expose the bullshit that he himself puts out on the internet, or that he says in his videos, which is still part of the internet. This right here is something a little different. We're delving into this man's life. Now, granted, you do not have to take my word if I found this piece of documentation. You can look in the comment section of my last video, or someone in my comment section will link you to the website where you can find it. But you yourself will have to look it up. I'm not going to put it out there. I'm not trying to be professional. But I feel like I should be at least a decent human being about it. More so than he is. Now, most of you be like, well, that's kind of you, but what about the people who directed you to this? In truth, I was the one who put the suggestion out there that is there a paper trail? No one asked me to bring this out there, to bring this to the forefront. They were like, hey, we found this website. You take a look, and I'm sure you'll find what you're looking for. That's all that these 3 people offered me. And all I did was throw out the suggestion. In truth, nobody's at fault. And if anybody should be at fault, then blame me. Blame me for being this pathetic detractor who went out there and looked up some information to save some people who who are being lied to on a consistent basis. At the end of the day, what is the goal of a detractor? I've been meaning to do a video on this, but at least from the way I look at it, is to bring the truth to the forefront. Because I understand that some people live under the stipulation, or under the idea that they would rather be in a beautiful lie than in an ugly truth. But that's reality, ladies and gentlemen. What the reality is he's not just some shitty Let's Player. He's not some asshole online that if you stop talking about him, he'll go away. He's someone who rips off people. He convinces children to give up their money. And when they run out, what do? They go to their parents and take their money. Now, does Phil advocate them doing that? No. But what he does pushes them to it. There is a person living in a goddamn cardboard box because of Phil. And yet this person still gives up every cent that he has to him, just about. There's something wrong with this, ladies and gentlemen. If Phil was providing the type of content that he was supposed to, if Phil listened to the people within his own community that he was supposed to, he wouldn't have the problems that he does. I've gone to Phil's forums. I've seen what people have said. There are some very decent people in his community. And they've tried very hard, not only on his forums, but in his streams. And those are usually the ones who are silenced, whether by him or by their own volition, because they're afraid that they won't be taken seriously or they'll be criticized. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is more than just a shitty Let's Player. He is a problem. And for the people who come to videos and say, hey man, he's just a shitty Let's Player, let him go. I'm asking you to go to his streams for a day or so, and you watch some of his content, and you take a look at what's there, and you tell me, is he just a shitty Let's Player, or he's more than that? I want you to go to his pre-streams. You don't have to go to all of them. Go to a couple. That's all you really need to see that he's a problem. Now, am I asking any of you to take up your pitchfork and to stake him, to set him on fire? No. I'm not asking you to do anything, to be honest with you. I'm not asking you to do anything. I have a message that I want to put out, but in truth, I'm hoping this is just somewhat entertaining for you. Because in truth, either A, you know about DSP, or you don't know about DSP. That's the only two crowds that would come here, to be honest with you. So, I'm not asking you to do anything. I've never asked you guys to do anything, but to just hear me out. And in truth, you've done that. And I'm grateful for that more than anything else. Because that's all I ever wanted, was to say my opinion. And maybe it's heard. That's all I've really ever asked for. And even then, in some ways, some people will tell you that maybe even that's too much. But I appreciate it nonetheless. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the conclusion of this video, I don't know if I've presented enough to convince you. As someone who is not professional and not diligent, I shouldn't have been expected to. But I hope that I was able to at least get some point across with what little evidence that I had and what you yourselves may already know about to do so. But on the other spectrum of that coin, if I did not present enough information to you, I would hope that you would go out and try to find some of that information on your own. I've already told you about 2 channels that are very good to go to. I can tell you a bunch of other channels if you'd like. I can even list them in the comment section. Other people will too, that you can go to if you don't take my word. Where you can go and you can hear their thoughts, and you can hear it straight from Phil's mouth itself. In truth, go to Phil's streams. Check out his pre-streams. They tell you everything. His pre-streams are a wealth of information and probably one of the greatest pieces of propaganda against Phil that even Phil doesn't really realize. Well, really realize, I'm sorry. Even though he actually does, because in a recent video he said, oh, I'm just going to leave my mic on and see what people get. He understands that he is his worst enemy. Now he's trying to see if he can profit from it. The sad thing is he's a couple years too late. This type of irresponsibility that this man has brought upon himself as well as his community is a problem. Even if you don't know anybody who follows Phil, even if you don't care about Phil yourself, that's fine. And I'm not asking you to be humanitarians. I'm not telling you to care to try to save the world. I'm certainly not trying to do it either. You can't save everybody. All I'm trying to do is just put an opinion out there. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. It is what it is. That's all I can really provide you, to be honest with you. I can't give you anything more than that. You can hate the delivery. You can hate the structure. You can hate everything about the video itself. And that's fine. You can shoot the messenger. But did you get the message? Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my special report on Phil, Part 2, Whose Fault Is It? Of the initial problem, which is his taxes. I'm sorry that it ran a little longer than usual. Lately, it's just they've just been kind of running kind of long. I hope you guys don't mind. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is DSP News, always late, never breaking, unreliable coverage that you can't count on. A GTG Network and Productions. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to go ahead and bring another outro from someone who I personally enjoy. The artist's name is Loaded Lux, and we're going to hear some bars. You may have heard the same bar scheme in the last video, but I'm going to go ahead and try to pick another bar, but I might not. I might just go to one of his usual bars that are just absolutely amazing, and we're going to go to that. So give me just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this was DSP News. Always late, never breaking, unreliable coverage that you can't count on. A GTG Network and Productions. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, the world is a very scary place out there. Especially with people like Phil pushing his narrative in it. This will conclude GTG Radio, and the outro is coming now.
Still going in at the curfew. Beat the brakes off of this nigga, I hate commercials. Search you in the engine, cause business been getting personal. But get him to the circle, that's who I'm gonna get at work to. Virtual vices, grip and screw up your life strip. Tombstones, diapers, everyone's in a cipher. I'm mic'd up medicine, dosage really lethal. Dopest vocals in the needle poking. Spoken for the people, nowhere equal. You don't understand the underlining in the science. Written niggas indecisive, I decipher physics. You was exercising limits, reaching when you writing lyrics. Sliding with them lines, all they rappers are violinists. I'm confused. Like really, no, I'm confused. And it's just dancing with your dreams. I focus the beam. Anakin, steady as a mannequin. Standing stiff as the planet spin. Camping in, out of your mind. Woke in the ambulance. Did his best in there with a champion. Shit.